Welcome back to Conservative Conversations. I'm Reid.
And I'm Frank.
Today we're going to be talking about the passing of the Pope and some other recent headlines. But before we get started, I would like to remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. And if you would like to hear an additional segment, become a paid subscriber through our podcast host, Red Circle.
All right. Well, we certainly hope you all had a happy Easter and got to spend some time with your families and eat some good food and maybe even see one of those great outdoor sunrise services that some churches offer. Have you ever been to one of those?
I have not.
They're really neat. Yeah, my grandma's church, they used to do one down by the river, and there was an outdoor gazebo, and people would gather down there first thing in the morning for a sunrise service. Beautiful.
Oh, wow.
It's absolutely a beautiful thing.
Nice.
Yeah, but anyway, Easter was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Did you enjoy yours?
I certainly did.
That's good.
I had a good time with some of my family.
Yep, it was a nice day.
Yeah.
But then, of course, we all wake up today to the news that Pope Francis died at 88.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear that when I saw it this morning.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a shock because he was just out there giving services and stuff for Easter, yesterday.
Right.
So we're here 1 minute, gone the next.
Yeah, it's amazing how things like that can happen.
Yeah, I mean, it just sort of, especially the timing, it's
Right,
just sort of
exactly.
strange to wake up and see that in the headlines right away. So,
Yeah.
I would certainly wish well to everyone who's grieving. I'm not Catholic myself. I do have some small history with, Catholicism, and I know several Catholics, and so I'm somewhat familiar. I know you guys will be grieving through this process, and I just wish you guys well.
Right.
But in the meantime, one of the other things that I think has been really cool that I'm interested in this is right now the guy who's acting as Camerlengo, which is sort of like the stand-in pope, if you will. He's like the guy who sort of does all the official business and runs the offices and is like the keeper of the keys of the Vatican while in this time while they're electing a new pope.
Right.
And this guy, Kevin Joseph Farrell, is an Irish-born American. And he was Bishop of Dallas from 2007 to 2016.
Huh.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And my mind actually went racing. Oh, and I'm sorry, folks, if you hear me cough. I've just gotten over a small chest cold here a couple of days ago. But my mind started racing because I started thinking, well, how cool would it be if we could get an American-type cardinal? Pope.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think anything like that's ever happened before. And I think the concept has been called far-fetched in the past, that such a thing could ever occur. But I think I've read a little too much of, like, Dan Brown type of stuff. Because I'm thinking, well, he's like the acting pope right now. He's Camerlengo. He'll probably be elected. But no, I did a little bit of research into this, and he's not a favorite. It doesn't seem like he has a very good path. I mean, it's not impossible, but he doesn't have a very good path to the papacy. And actually, historically, it's only happened 5 times before, and 2 of them are kind of a stretch. So I thought I might just hit those, because you might find them interesting, right?
Sure.
But, okay, so the guy who later became Innocent VII, in 1404, he was a Camerlengo to a pope who had passed away or left office. Let's just say left office, because I don't want to be technically accurate on all of these points. But so whatever pope had left office, he was Camerlengo, during the transition, and then became Pope.
Okay.
Then the next one was Leo the 13th in 1878. I did tell you Innocent the 7th was in 1404, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Leo the 13th is in 1878. So whoever, right, it's the same thing. A pope passed, he was Carmelengo, and became Pope right then. Pius the 12th is the most recent in 1939. Same situation. Now, there's two others that are stretches. They're both back in the 1200s. There's Honorius III. In 1216, he became a pope, but his was a little different because the chain was a little broken. He was Carmelengo for a pope, but he did not immediately become the pope. Somebody else became the pope. But then that guy died or something, somehow left office. I don't want to be technically accurate. And they basically like nominated this guy again, right? And he had been Carmelengo under so he technically counts because he'd been a Carmelengo and became a pope. And it's going to be the same example for this last one, Alexander IV in 1254. So there are examples of a Carmelengo becoming pope, but it's definitely more rare than a certain well-known Dan Brown novel might make you think.
Right. Yeah. That is an interesting situation.
Yeah, and it would be neat to see an American. You know, I have to just pull for one.
Right. Yeah. Of course.
Seems unlikely.
Right.
But anyway, it's supposed to be decided within the next 15 to 20 days.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So
sooner than I would have expected.
Yeah, we'll be watching to see. And I think one of the things, I mean, I don't want to go too far out there on this because, again, I think this goes to more of my Dan Brown type of education on this subject, but I think they have to be unanimous. They vote and vote and vote until they're unanimous in choice. Right. So it can take a while sometimes. I guess we'll just see.
Right. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see who gets chosen. I don't remember when Pope Francis became a pope. I know it was, like relatively recently. He hasn't been there for like a really, really long time.
No, I don't feel like they ever really are because they're old.
Yeah.
They're like old when they get elected.
Right. I think he's the first one, first new pope since it's probably my adult life, I believe. I don't recall who was before him.
I don't know. I wasn't really prepared to get into this, but there have been several. I think there have been several.
Right, of course.
I think he was kind of controversial, wasn't he, too? Because he was the one that was like all gay friendly and that sort of thing, right?
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, they each seem to have their own different controversies, because...
Yeah, or agendas, you might even say.
Because not all Catholics are the same, just, as anybody is. But interesting timing, and I'm sure, as you point out, people will be grieving greatly over his loss, or the loss of him.
Yes, but somebody will be happy at the end of this because, a new pope will be chosen. A new country will feel that it has closer ties to the papacy than, ordinarily. And the people, like let's say it's a Spanish pope or a European pope or whatever. There will be a lot of celebrating in that home country.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I suppose we'll move on to another quick story here. It didn't make too much news, but last week, former President Joe Biden came out and gave a speech in Chicago.
Oh, yeah? What was that old white turd talking about?
I don't really know. I think he was trying to talk about how terrible the tariffs are, how they're going to hurt people's benefits, and how Doge is going to take away Social Security and Medicare and things like that. I didn't watch the whole thing because I couldn't stand it. I saw some clips, and one of the first clips I saw, I immediately thought, "Oh my gosh, he sounds like he did back at the debate." He sounds just as terrible, just as old. And it hasn't made too much news because who wants to talk about it? I mean, the Democrats certainly don't want him out there, covering the headlines
Well,
with this
that's
video.
almost what I just asked. I mean, do you think this is something he's doing organically? Like he wanted to go out and hold this presser and say these things? Or do you think somebody's put him up to this, asked him to go out and speak? And
I almost seems like, to me, just from my take, he wants to do it. Because whoever is the most leader of the Democrat Party right now, why would they have wanted him to come out to do this? I don't think it makes sense.
there is no leader. They're totally chaotic.
Right. Yeah. Right. That's why I phrased it the way I did.
Well, it's just interesting because I haven't seen the clip, and after hearing, that is a good question. I feel like because I was initially going to say like, oh man, I was going to make the Jimmy Carter point that I hope that they don't just keep trotting Biden out because he's a party guy, and they can, and he's a former president, and he's one of theirs, and they can just pull him out every day until the day of his death as some kind of, puppet that they can put on display, have perform, because I feel so bad about them doing that to Jimmy Carter. They pulled him out for Kamala, remember? And he was like very shortly passed away after that.
Right.
So that's where my mind was going at first. But I mean, if he's out there doing this on his own, then maybe I should take the tact that maybe somebody needs to get a hold of him, and put him under care or something like that.
Yeah, because this is happening on top of all these, some of these articles or reports, kind of like people coming out and talking about how terrible he was. All the behind the scenes stuff is starting to come out.
Yeah, Jake Tapper's book and all that.
Right. Yeah, I feel like his isn't the only one. Maybe he's the only one with a book, but
well, you know what I mean. But that whole vein, like,
right?
Because his is so poignant to my mind. That's why it's the example, because it's ridiculous, it's preposterous that he would write such a book.
Right. And so that's another thing that with all these types of reports come about how people knew how bad it was at the time.
Who even wants him?
Right. Why would they continue to bring him out when it's certainly not going to be any better condition?
Must just be ego driven.
Yeah.
That's
his
sad.
Ego, I guess. Whose other ego would it be?
So
I just thought that was interesting. He gave a speech that nobody's really talked about.
What's all right? I hope within a year and a half things are humming so smooth that if Biden tries to poke his head out in public like that again, people will just grab him and run off with him like in one of those old movies.
Right, or the cartoon where you see coming off screen the big hook.
Yeah, exactly.
Taking him right off screen. Or the Easter Bunny coming back to tell him, "Sir, you gotta move along." Yeah. But I just thought that was interesting. I kind of got a laugh out of it in a way, just because it baffles my mind why he'd even come out. But who knows?
I think it makes sense if it were like some kind of a teachers union event or something like that, because he's such a made man, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That he probably will have to work under conscription of some sort for the rest of his life, like the Jimmy Carter example I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, in a way, my heart kind of does go out for old Joe Biden. I feel like he
Sure.
ought to be able to just put his feet up and go to bed. Have some ice cream, buddy. Watch Green Acres. Come on.
Yeah.
Or the one with the talking horse. Come on, Joe.
Mr. Ed?
Yeah. You know Joe Biden's a Mr. Ed fan.
Yeah, probably.
Give that dude some rum raisin ice cream and some Mr. Ed.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how often he comes around. Especially since, it's the midterms are gearing up.
I will say at least his health's well. Poor old coot. But
Right.
Anyway.
Right. That's all I got. I'll have a link to his whole speech if anybody wants to watch it.
Well, I think that's interesting. Kind of leads me in a certain way into my next point, which is how somebody on our side I just saw in a recent video kind of like, I feel embarrassed for her after watching this, the way she interacted with somebody out in public. And it kind of reminds me of some of the stunts, the crazier behavior that we've seen from some of the lefty girls, like AOC and Jasmine Crockett in particular, with some of this almost like vulgar and like ratchet, like West Side kind of ghetto talk that she does, like on the floor, and some of the stuff that she's called some of her colleagues, and the wheelchair Hot Wheels, the comments she was making about Greg Abbott,
Right.
and,
yeah.
So I just think it's interesting that as we sit here and comment, when I saw this video, it made me have a gut reaction. Like, I was embarrassed by this. I think she totally mishandled it. I want to call it out. And apparently, when you look into somebody's history, you can see that, this lady's name is Nancy Mace. She's been breaking through glass ceilings, and she's kind of a feminist type. And in certain ways, that's great and cool and all, and I like to see it for our side. Like, she was the first Republican woman elected to the U.S. House of Representatives from South Carolina. That's pretty cool.
Sure.
I don't have anything against that.
Right.
She was the first to graduate from the Citadel in 1999, which I'm not exactly sure what that is. I think it's some kind of military or some kind of training academy thing. I'm not positive, I don't want to be quoted on what that is. But, that's kind of cool. If you can do that, it's kind of cool. Now, apparently, as I look into it, that maybe some strings were pulled, or she kind of used position or clout or something to be able to get this done, which I don't know if it is exactly hunky-dory, but and when you look into this, she seems to have sort of a habit of being like this really feminist type, feminista kind of thing, that girl power kind of stuff that I almost find distasteful, in a modern or postmodern world, because we're seeing so many rights, like for women with this trans movement and stuff, broken down, that I think we've had a sort of equality, a sort of understood basic equality for a while. And for people to act like we haven't, or that there's still such a fight and such an imbalance, I think is sort of preposterous, that it kind of makes you not living in reality. It makes it seem like you're not really living in reality. And this latest incident, I would just encourage people to go watch the video for themselves. Reid, I hope you watch it.
Sure.
I'll show it to you after this, but this guy just comes up to her, basically normal conversation. He is recording discreetly. You can kind of tell. But he's not just like shoving the cell phone in her face. He doesn't get up close to her. They're both in a high-scale makeup store, in like a high-scale mall, it looks like. And he just asks her, when are you going to have your next town hall? Because apparently there's a little bit of a backstory that something to the effect of like her latest town hall, she ended up having it on a conference call, which was changed at the last minute. Like, I guess it was supposed to be in person, but they changed it to a conference call at the last minute. And I guess a lot of people were put out by that, and a lot of people wanted to attend, and et cetera, et cetera. So he just comes up to her, and that's just, I think that's the gist of it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really deep dive on this. But I guess there's just some kind of context, if you get me, for why he might be asking her about the town halls. And he does it in a very respectful manner, keeps his distance. He seems like an upscale kind of guy. He seems to be homosexual, appears to be, you know. And she does this thing. He just comes up and casually asks her, when's your next town hall going to be, you know? And he might even say, hey, Nancy Mace. I'm not actually sure, but, you know, he basically recognizes her, and he says, hey there, when's your next town hall going to be? You know, just like that. Not aggressive. Well, she starts talking to him, but she's distracted because she starts pulling out her phone. She's going to get out her camera. And so she starts answering him. She's like, well, you know, I had 12 last year. You could have come to any of those 12 last year. And she's punching in her passcode and pulling on her camera. And he maybe starts to elaborate. Maybe he says something else. I don't remember at this exact point, but eventually she gets out her phone and gets her camera on. And as soon as she does, her tone just totally changes. Like, he's like, you know, like she wants to control the narrative now. And she's like, well, why are you just coming up to me? And don't you know that I voted for gay rights? I voted for gay marriage twice. And he's like, what? He's like, that doesn't have anything. You know what I mean? He just has like a normal reaction. He's like, I was just asking about your town halls. And she's like, and this is the problem with you lefty types, you know, and blah, blah, blah. She just is going off on this guy.
Right.
And she ends up cussing him and everything. And so it's just kind of bizarre because he recorded it all too. He was recording discreetly. Right. And when you look at it back to back, both sides, both angles, she looks like a nut job.
Right. Yeah, that is surprising to hear about Nancy Mace. I certainly wouldn't have expected it from her, but I don't know her personally, so, I mean, what do I know?
Well, I just want to call it out because apparently she's done some of these other weird things too. Like, she apparently voted to have Steve Bannon placed in jail or something for contempt of Congress because something about the January 5th committee. I think she was on that or something. I'm not 100% on this, but something about Steve Bannon and vote for him to go to jail. And then she might have been part of this. There was a bill that they just, all these women types, these feministas in Congress were voting for, where they could vote by proxy, where they could basically, if they had just had a child, they could stay at home with their child and still be voting members of the Congress without having to travel and be present in the Congress. They wouldn't have to take their kid. They wouldn't have to travel. They could still have their cake and eat it too, sitting right from their couch in California and not have to go to Washington. Well, that got shot down. And I'm just saying, I bet she's one of those types where, you know, I mean, maybe, I'm not saying there's anything wrong, and especially if the people voted for a pregnant woman. I don't really want to get down into the nitty gritty on that. But if you say that you should be present, I don't think that we should just change the rules. You ought to be able to see what you've done. You've made certain choices, right?
Yeah.
You shouldn't be able to just change the rules so that your vote can still count. You can make your vote count. You have to make sacrifices.
Right. One of the things I thought of, like, towards the beginning when you're talking about it, you're also naming off, like, how, Jasmine Crockett and AOC, how some of those Congresswomen act. And it isn't just with the Congresswomen, what I'm about to say. It's some Congress people in general. Like, some of them are, it's not like they're there to be lawmakers, they're just there to be activists.
Right.
And I kind of what it makes me think about this Nancy Mace story, and I'm not necessarily calling her just a activist politician for the Republicans, but we certainly have some, I think. I'm not too familiar with, what's her face, the other one, Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah.
She has done some pretty good things, I guess. Voted for some stuff I like. But at least on the Republican side, she's the one, in my opinion, comes off more of like...
unhinged?
Not necessarily... Yeah, unhinged in some ways, but more of a activist politician from our side.
I think she's somewhat genuine. I've watched her grow, too. I mean, I think she's kind of a simpleton, if you ask me.
Sure, right.
From sort of like the backwoods, you know. And I think when she came up there, she doesn't know much, and she's trying to do. And I've seen her grow. I think she's gotten more intelligent. She speaks better. She speaks slower. She speaks... but, you know, she still has a lot of that old backwoods sass mama coming out of her, too.
Right.
I don't know. I sort of treat her with kid gloves. I don't know why. Because I do think she's a little out there. Mm-hmm. But I don't ever want to just say, like, disown her or anything. She's never done anything that far for me.
Right. Yeah.
And she doesn't seem all feminista.
Right. I don't get that from her either, as far as that goes.
Yeah. And I know that's a weird phrase I keep saying, but you know what I mean. Just like pro-feminist, female first, that kind of thing.
Right.
And I think you've even seen this from some of the older types that you'd think would be more level-headed, like the Lisa Murkowskis and the Susan Collinses of the world. You know, like when all that Brett Kavanaugh stuff was going on. And I think they gave undue consideration to that Christine Blasey Ford character, you know, and allowed that farce to go along. Believe all women and all that kind of thing. And Mazie Hirono out there saying that all men should just shut up.
Right. Yeah. Another thing that had come to my mind while you were talking was like the breaking the glass ceiling and how you know, some of these feminists act like there's still a big fight to be fought.
Yeah.
And we've seen that sort of recently with these women that went into space.
Yes.
Yes,
oh,
Katy
yeah, what a
Perry
silly thing.
and whoever else, Gail King, and how they're just they act like it's so amazing how these women were. It's almost like they feel like they're breaking new ground.
Well, what's crazy is I saw this great bit. You know, I don't like Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's one of my least favorite people.
Yeah.
But he even kind of made fun of that. I mean, I don't know if it's an older bit that's resurfaced because of this, but I think he was actually talking about like Jeff Bezos, like his thing itself. I don't think he was talking about these girls.
Sure.
But the thing has recycled where he's like, they weren't in space. He's like, when you're up there, he's like, you can't even see the circumference of the earth or whatever. He's like, you can't even see. He's like, you can only see about 11-mile radius around you or whatever. He's like, you're not in space.
Yeah. Right. And you know, these women feel like they're being mocked because other people are just calling it that they took a ride to space, and how just saying that is somehow sexist, when I would very much say the same thing about Mr. The old fella, the actor, Captain Kirk.
Oh, yeah, William Shatner.
Yes, him. When he did it, he took a ride to space, and he's not an astronaut, and neither are these ladies. And they're not breaking any ground. I mean, they're certainly not the first women to go in space. I mean, that's been done.
I don't think they're even the first all-female crew.
No, I don't think so either. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's something that immediately popped in my head when you're talking about how they feel like there's still glasses to be broken. I'm sure there are in some things, but they're not that big of a deal anymore.
No. And it's funny, when I was writing out notes today, I coined a phrase.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I'm going to call it from now on. This kind of stuff where they do these dumb stunts where they have those paddles and they wear those white, like all white power suits, to put on that image that they're united as women or whatever. I'm going to call it pussy hat pushback. Because it seems as stupid as those pussy hats were from when Donald Trump got elected the first time. Right. They were all standing out there in Times Square with their pink pussy hats on. And that was a thing forever. Right. Well, that's what this reminds me of. It's just so stupid. It's just to be eye-catching, to be out there, to get in the news, get your attention. But it doesn't do anything. It has no teeth.
Yep.
And we actually need to watch this kind of stuff, okay? Even from our people. If you're one of our chicks, cool, be with us.
Right.
But be civil. Come on, girls.
Yep.
Come on, ladies. Nancy Mace. Be civil.
Yeah. Exactly.
I don't understand. Be civil and be a good representative. You should assume you're being filmed all the time.
Right. Yep. I would definitely agree with that. I mean, that would go for just about anybody these days.
Well, absolutely.
Even if you're not a public figure.
Absolutely.
So.
But I mean, especially if you are, and if you're one of ours,
right?
Be good on camera. What is wrong with you?
Right. Is that all you got?
Yes, that is all I got.
All right. Well, I have one quick topic that we'll go through in our exclusive segment. So if you would like to hear that, you can become a paid subscriber through our podcast host, Red Circle. We would greatly appreciate it if you did. Well, all right, listeners. If you have enjoyed this great conservative conversation, we hope you will go follow us on your favorite podcast platform. On Spotify, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, and many others. And you can also go subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is still Conservative Conversations, but will be renamed to Contemporary Conservative by the end of the month. So we are putting a date on it, just so you know. And of course, we'll keep you updated as we move through the full transition going forward.
That's right. We hope you'll look forward to those updates and get excited for the transition, and make sure and tell your friends and any other fans of the show who you know about the update, and encourage them to become paid subscribers so that they have access to the same exclusive and bonus content that you have access to. And as always, we thank you for listening.